Picture this. The morning air is thick with dampness and rot, a faint fog clinging to the jagged stones of the tower green. You feel the chill of dew-soaked grass beneath your feet, pressed into the hard earth by the weight of your trembling body. Your skin crawls with cold sweat. The sound of steel being whetted nearby sends a tremor down your spine, sharper than the blade that waits for you. You can hear birds, the crows mostly, squabbling over something left behind near the scaffold. It reeks of blood and iron and burned cloth. You are dressed in fine velvet, a deep crimson that matches the thick stains on the planks above the straw. Your throat is raw from praying. You are 35. You are alone. You are Anne Boleyn, queen no longer. And in moments, your neck will be offered to France's cleanest sword. You were not always this. You were brilliant, defiant, and loved. But none of that matters now, because history remembers screams in silence, and today it will remember yours. What happened to you was not justice. It was machinery. It was theatre. And it was the will of a man who once swore to love you forever. Before we journey into these forgotten tales of survival and suffering, if you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths of history, please consider liking this video and hitting that subscribe button for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. She is born into ambition. The year is 1501. Anne Boleyn enters a world already aching with power struggles and religious fractures. Her family, the Boleyns, are minor nobility but hungry, their status sharpened like knives. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, is relentless, positioning his daughters like pawns in a court that plays for keeps. He sends Anne to the continent young, barely beyond childhood, to be polished in the glittering but dangerous courts of Margaret of Austria and later Queen Claude of France. It is here that she learns language, dance, grace, wit. But more importantly, she absorbs the rules of male power. She sees how women survive in proximity to the throne. She sees what happens when they fail. Anne returns to England in 1522, not a girl but a woman, remade by courtly politics. The air back home is heavy with Henry VIII's dissatisfaction. His Spanish queen, Catherine of Aragon, has failed to give him a son. The king's gaze begins to wander, first to Anne's sister Mary, then to Anne. She does not surrender herself easily. That is what makes her dangerous. Anne understands that to be desired is to hold power. She wields her refusal like a sword, teasing Henry with letters, glances, and distance. She becomes more than a mistress. She becomes a promise, a vision of fertility, intelligence, and English pride. By the mid-1520s, she is everywhere in the court's whispers, the lady, the concubine, the witch. By the time Henry declares his marriage to Catherine invalid and wrenches England away from Rome itself, Anne is already pregnant. It is a scandal felt across Europe. She is crowned queen in 1533. That same summer, she gives birth to a daughter, not a son, not an heir. And with that, the foundation beneath her throne begins to rot. What happened next would be far worse than court gossip or cold royal beds. It would become a campaign of institutional cruelty, masked as legal process, and Anne Boleyn, once the most powerful woman in England, would be buried beneath its weight. The Tudor court is not just a place. It is a mechanism, sleek and blood-slicked, designed to consume and convert. Every corridor echoes with betrayal. Every smile hides calculation. The architecture itself, cold grey stone, narrow doorways, suffocating chambers conspires to make you small. Here, ambition is currency, and proximity to the king is both lifeline and death sentence. Anne's greatest mistake is not her pride, or her sharp tongue, or even her failure to produce a male heir. It is underestimating the system that had elevated her. The very machinery that lifted her above Catherine of Aragon is now primed to dismantle her with the same precision, and it begins with silence. First, her allies vanish. Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, once her co-conspirator in the break from Rome, now sees her as an obstacle. She is too vocal, too independent, too Protestant. Worse, she opposes a Franco-imperial marriage alliance that he desperately seeks. Cromwell, pragmatic and unflinching, knows Anne's downfall must appear clean, legal, and divinely justified. He will not stab her in a hallway. He will script her destruction through the law. Then, the rumours begin. Whispers of adultery, incest, treason. Accusations emerge with disturbing precision. A court musician, her brother. Courtiers who once danced in her presence now tremble before Cromwell's interrogators. They are tortured, or threatened, or promised safety. Under pressure, they confess to the unthinkable. The statements are inconsistent, absurdly timed, and geographically impossible. One man, Mark Smeaton, is said to have been with Anne while she attended church in a different county. The others are nobility, who likely believed their class would protect them. They were wrong. You are in Anne's shoes now. Feel the sharp draft of your tower cell. The stones sweat with damp. The walls close in like a vice. They have taken your brother, your friends. You scream that you are innocent, but your voice echoes off stone and dies unheard. The charges are read aloud in Westminster Hall, grotesque in their detail. You are accused of seducing men through sorcery, of mocking the king's manhood, of plotting his death. The system feeds off spectacle, and your trial is theatre. The jurors include men who owe their fortunes to Cromwell or who have reason to fear Anne's influence. The verdict is decided before you enter the room. You wear a plain gown. You do not weep. You plead not guilty. You stare straight into the eyes of the men who will send you to die, and you hold their gaze. They do not meet yours. When the sentence is passed, the air grows colder than stone. You are to be burned or beheaded. The king will decide. He chooses the sword. A French executioner is summoned. Elegant, efficient, symbolic. As you sit again in your tower cell, knowing the scaffold is being built within sight of your window, you realize something. It was never about guilt. It was about removal. Anne Boleyn was not tried. She was erased. To truly grasp the horror of Anne's destruction, we must examine how the Tudor machine masked its violence in ceremony and legitimacy. The machinery of monarchy moves quickly when it chooses to destroy. Anne Boleyn, once the kingdom's sacred centre, becomes taboo overnight. Her portraits disappear. Her initials are chiselled off palace walls. Even the coinage is quietly withdrawn and reminted. The system does not just kill its victims, it rewrites them, and that rewriting is more violent than the blade. The Tudor regime operates on a principle of divine kingship, but its survival depends on managing threats real or imagined through a spectacle of punishment cloaked in legality. What it cannot control, it consumes. The tools are many. Star chamber hearings, secret interrogations, coerced confessions. A web of informants stretches from the royal apartments to the servants' quarters. There is no safe place. Truth itself is malleable, sculpted by necessity and fear. Anne's downfall is a study in how institutional power manipulates perception. Cromwell does not need her to be guilty. He needs her to be despised. And so the narrative shifts, from beloved queen to seductress, from reformer to heretic, from wife to witch. Rumours take on the weight of scripture. Anne bewitched the king. Anne committed incest. Anne laughed when he fell from his horse. Each lie is more grotesque than the last, and each is accepted because people want to believe in a world where punishment is deserved. But Anne does not die quietly. In her final days, confined to a cold cell within the tower's inner ward, she writes. Her words, carefully composed and ferociously lucid, are preserved in fragments. She speaks of betrayal, of injustice, of God. Her mind, always sharp, remains defiant, even as her body wastes. Her ladies chosen by the king to spy report her every word. Still, Anne shows poise. She prays aloud. She comforts them. She laughs once when told the French executioner is delayed and says, "I heard he is good, and I have but a little neck." It is not bravado, it is control. In a system built to break her, Anne clings to the only power left, the narrative of her own death. By now, the psychological toll is unbearable. Isolation, betrayal, public humiliation. You feel it in your bones. The silence is the worst of it. It presses on your ears, heavier than chains. You imagine your daughter, Elizabeth, and wonder what lies will be told to her. You wonder if she will remember your voice, your face, your scent. You whisper prayers, not for your own soul, but for hers, for memory, to survive where you will not. Anne is not the only one caught in the machinery. Her alleged lovers are executed before her, dragged to Tower Hill, their heads displayed, their names erased. George Boleyn, her brother, dies screaming in protest. No one listens. The system punishes those who dare love its enemies, and it rewards those who comply with silence. The court returns to its festivities. Masks are performed. The king dines with Jane Seymour. A new betrothal is whispered within hours of Anne's condemnation. Life at court does not pause for tragedy. It absorbs it, metabolizes it, then moves forward. But even within this dark machinery, there are fractures. One of her ladies refuses to speak against her. A sympathetic jailer loosens the rules just enough for her to write a final prayer. These moments do not save her, but they defy the idea that the system is absolute. We must understand that Anne Boleyn's fate was not an accident or a misstep. It was a design, a deliberate erasure orchestrated through pomp, fear, and the bloody delusion of justice. Her defiance, even in ruin, makes her dangerous long after her head falls. What follows is not just death, but a spectacle meant to redefine power for generations. As Anne's final morning arrives, the kingdom shifts its weight and prepares to watch. It is Friday, the 19th of May, 1536. The scaffold has been constructed on Tower Green, an unusual honour granted by the king. Common executions happen on Tower Hill, public and dirty. This is private, dignified, symbolic. Because though Anne Boleyn has been cast as a traitor, she was once queen. She bore the king's child. And, for all the system's brutality, image still matters. Word spreads that the French swordsman has arrived. Jean Rambaud, flown in from Calais at great expense and instructed to be swift. It is said he brings a long, curved blade hidden beneath his cloak so the condemned will not see it. So they do not flinch. Anne does not flinch. She rises early, dressed simply in a dark grey gown, trimmed with ermine. Her hair is pinned beneath a white coif. She wears no jewels, no crown, only a crucifix at her throat. Her ladies help her prepare, they tremble, she does not. Anne speaks gently to them, even as her lips tremble and her breath comes in shallow gasps. She confesses once more to a priest, not guilt, but faith. Then she walks, head held high, across the damp grass toward the scaffold. This is not just a killing, it is a national ritual, the culmination of a system that thrives on hierarchy, spectacle, and submission. Over 100 privileged witnesses have gathered. Nobles, officials, servants. They watch not only out of duty, but out of fear. Because to look away is to risk suspicion. Anne's final speech is composed, careful, reverent. She praises the king. She asks for prayers. She does not mention the lies. She does not mention her child, but the air itself seems to weep. The wind picks up. The sky bruises with early storm clouds. Birds fall silent. She kneels upon the scaffold. Her eyes scan the crowd once, quickly, perhaps searching for a familiar face, perhaps already beyond them. The executioner speaks to his assistants in French, asking for his sword. It is a trick. The blade is already in his hand. While Anne looks momentarily toward the sound of footsteps, he strikes. There is no scream. Only a brief, soft crack. A silence. Then blood, warm and sudden, arcs across the planks. Her body collapses, twitching. Her head, severed cleanly, lands upon the straw. The crowd exhales. The women rush forward to cover her remains with a linen cloth. There is no coffin, only a crude arrow chest found in the Tower armory. Her body is placed inside, along with the head. No markings, no flowers, no royal crest. And just like that, the system exhales too. Its job is done. Within 24 hours, Henry VIII is betrothed to Jane Seymour. Within 10 days, he is married again. Anne's daughter, Elizabeth, is declared illegitimate and stripped of her title. She is 2 years old. The broader implications of Anne Boleyn's fall cannot be measured in mourning alone. They ripple outward, shaping centuries. Her death confirms that the English monarchy is not bound by Rome, law, or truth. It signals to Europe that Henry is absolute, that his will is divine, and that no woman, no matter how clever, fertile, or beloved, is beyond elimination. It sets a precedent. Not just for future, Queen's Catherine Howard would follow her in death less than 6 years later, but for how the state conceals its cruelty with pageantry. How it maintains order through fear, not justice. Anne's enemies rise in her absence. Thomas Cromwell consolidates power, directing the next wave of religious reform and persecution. Yet he too will fall, beheaded on Tower Hill only 4 years later. The machine does not pause, it feeds. And yet, despite the erasure, Anne leaves behind something indelible. A daughter, Elizabeth. Red-haired, brilliant, and watching. To understand how a woman with no grave marker became a mother to an empire, we must begin in silence. For days after Anne Boleyn's execution, the Tower remains hushed. No proclamations, no public mourning. Just the quiet shuffle of servants cleaning away blood-soaked straw, removing the scaffold, and burning the garments she died in. Her body, left in that rough wooden chest, is buried under the floor of the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, unmarked, anonymous, as though she never existed. The system, satisfied, moves on, but something has shifted. Henry VIII marries Jane Seymour and finally gains the son he craved. Edward, but the boy, dies young. Jane dies from childbirth. Catherine Parr, Henry's last wife, survives him. But none of them, not one, leave behind a legacy like Anne's. Because Anne's death does not end her story. It is her daughter, Elizabeth, born from scandal, raised in disgrace, who reclaims the crown. In 1558, Elizabeth Tudor becomes queen. She is 25. She remembers nothing of her mother firsthand, yet she inherits everything: her fire, her caution, her solitude. And from her throne, Elizabeth rewrites what power looks like. Anne, executed as a traitor, becomes mother to the Virgin Queen. The same nobles who spat on Anne's name now bow before her child. The same system that tried to erase her is forced to recognize her legacy. Elizabeth's reign is long, luminous, and ruthless. It shapes an empire, but beneath every royal portrait, beneath every poem praising Gloriana, the ghost of Anne Boleyn lingers. She becomes martyr, feminist icon, cautionary tale, and phoenix, depending on who tells the story. Centuries later, historians sift through her letters, her portraits, her enemies' confessions. They find a woman too intelligent for her time, too proud, too ambitious, too female. And even now, her story speaks. It speaks to the women erased from power through ceremony and shame, to systems that punish dissent with violence, cloaked as law, to every mother separated from her child by politics, betrayal, or death. Anne Boleyn's blood soaked into the scaffold planks, but her voice carried on through the girl she left behind. Today, the stone that marks Anne's burial was placed centuries after her death. A simple slab. It says only her name. No title, no epitaph. But we remember her still, because power forgets. But pain remembers, and history listens to those who were silenced. If this story unsettled you, it should. Because Anne Boleyn is not just history. She is warning. She is consequence. She is the cost of making yourself visible inside a system designed to crush women into silence.